Hi, and a warm welcome to the Transcend and Succeed show, the show that's dedicated to empowering viewers to take control of their lives by changing perceptions and embracing alternative approaches to health and wellness. Through engaging discussions and inspiring narratives, the show encourages individuals to explore diverse paths beyond traditional medical interventions, creating a deeper understanding of holistic methods and self-responsibility for well-being. I'm Dawn Livingston, and I have the great pleasure in introducing to you my guest for today's show, Glenna James. Glenna is a holistic health practitioner and fertility and pregnancy coach, and a huge beacon of empowerment and wisdom in the realm of women's health. Now, with a plethora of certifications, including acupressure, feng shui, and holistic nutrition, her dedication to understanding the intricate rhythms of the female body led her to attain a Master of Science degree in Complementary and Integrative Health. As a clinical herbalist and author of her own book, The Energies of Herbs, Glenna's passion for women's health, fertility, herbs, and wellness is enormous. Her mission is crystal clear: to guide and inspire women on their journey to understanding their bodies, embracing vitality, and living abundantly. So welcome to the show, Glenna.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on here.
You're welcome. It's lovely to see you. So firstly, can you share your personal journey and what inspired you to become a fertility and pregnancy coach?
Yes, from the time I was very young, I had my own period issues with menorrhea and dysmenorrhea, which is heavy bleeding and very painful periods. So that, birth control did not work for me. Neither did anything else medically. Even getting a ablation, where they go in and they use microwaves to ablate your uterus.
Microwaves?
Yes, it's like think of a spatula going out, and that's what they did, and it did not work. It worked for the first year, but then all the same symptoms came back. So even a D&C didn't work very well because they do a D&C first. It didn't work, and it took me down this path of why is this the way it is? And at the same time, I was already taking a lot of stuff out of my diet. I was taking a lot of hormonal foods out of my diet. I was taking a lot of plastics. I was taking a lot of hair care stuff out and make sure it was all organic or didn't have chemicals in it. And I saw a small shift in that. And then I started taking herbs for PMS and stuff like that. And then I think hormone testing really unlocked it for me to show me I had more estrogen in my body than I needed. So it was like, estrogen dominance can cause a lot of problems for women. So I'm just like, okay, this is what it is. And I got that under control, and a lot of my period issues went away. It's not 100%. I still have bad months, but I'm not hemorrhaging anymore. So it's like, women don't know this. They don't know that their period is supposed to be not painful, and they're not supposed to bleed that much. They don't do this. And we know with endometriosis, or even low levels in endometriosis, they don't treat it right. It's not treated right. They just treat it with medications, or they treat it with like ablations and stuff, or they treat it with surgery. That doesn't cure it. And it's kind of hard to cure endometriosis, but it's like, what is the cause of it? We don't know even to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like what you said there. They were just treating the symptoms. They weren't actually getting to the root cause of it. But I really liked what you said just a minute ago, that you started to make changes to your female products, and your shampoos. And what made you do that? Because not a lot of people think to do that. They don't realise the chemicals that are in some of these products are actually hormone disrupting.
Yes. What really caused that was I was already on a path to pursuing my master's at the time, and I was already in the process of, after, even before my master's, having a doctor tell me I need to see a health coach. And I'm like, why? So already looking up some of these issues with my own chemical sensitivities that I have, never knowing that was the cause of other problems. So researching, looking up what's really in these products, what's really in the food we're eating. How is Europe banning these chemicals and we're not? So something's got to be up with that. And then I saw my own health coach. She only was a health coach, and she goes, I think you should be a health coach because I can't help you. You already know everything. It's not worth your money. I'm like, okay, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
So in my master's, learning all this, being able to really deep dive into the science of things really helped. So I just started taking everything out. I kind of did it all in one sweep. I shouldn't have done it. I should have done it in small amounts. But I was like, everything has to go. Right now, everything has to go. Even the stuff I clean with on a daily basis has to go. What my cat is touching, because what they touch, I touch, has to go. So I went like bare bones down to like, this is vinegar, this is hydrogen peroxide, this is alcohol. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else, no chemicals, no nothing. Even my laundry detergent, I'm like, no.
Yeah, and it takes a lot for people to actually discover that these kind of products, although they're sold as convenient, right? They're sold as convenience or nice smelling, and yeah, that may be the case, but what's making it smell nice, and some of these ingredients in the back of bottles and tubs, etc., you can't even pronounce them. You've no idea what they are. And I've got myself into the habit now of looking up these ingredients and finding from where are these derived, and just formulated in a lab, and they're not clinically tested, they're not tested properly. So yeah, I so hear you. So what role does holistic health then play in supporting women through fertility challenges and pregnancy?
It's the first basis. It's overall health.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize how our overall health actually impacts our fertility. And also, we don't realize that our fertility is a actual vital sign. We think of breathing, our heart, our respiratory rate. We think of our blood pressure. We don't think of how our fertility and our actual cycle is telling us what's wrong with our body. It's that whole person approach. If you take a whole person approach and you leave out reproductive health for a woman or a man, you're cutting that in half, because a lot of problems can show up in the reproductive problems, like with PCOS. It's an insulin resistant problem, so that you're going to have problems with your sugar. So that means it's not just a reproductive issue where you can't get pregnant with that, it's also impacting other parts of your body. So right there shows that that's an overcompensating disorder, just like endometriosis. It can be in other parts of your body. It can attach to your liver, it can attach to all that, and then what's happening is when you go through your cycle, that is bleeding. Those endometrial cells are actually bleeding. So when it's attached to your liver, what do you think it's doing? It's bleeding, especially if it gets attached to your kidneys and all those other problems that can happen. And it's like, we don't look at that as a marker of what's going on everywhere else. Just like we know PMS can be an issue for women, and that the hormonal issues with can impact our mental health. Why do you get depressed? It's the hormonal shift, but also that shows other issues that might be going on, serotonin issues and all that. So holistic health just looks at your whole body, and it doesn't leave out the reproductive health. And that is what I try to do, is like, if I'm going to look at your gut, I'm going to look at your reproductive health as well. And then when we take our whole body into account, we can find issues with reproductive issues. And it might not be women. 50% of men are the cause. So it's also looking at the male aspect of fertility as well. It's like, I'm doing good, I'm doing what's going on with that side of it. So it's a cornerstone. We look at women first, but I also look at the male aspect as well. I don't want to leave them out, because I can do everything I can to help you get pregnant. But if you're not getting pregnant after 6 months and you have no PCOS, you have no issue, you have no secondary fertility problems, then you need to look at your partner.
Yeah, because if the body's environment isn't right, it's going to start telling you that there's problems here, and infertility is a symptom of that, right? So if we look at the body's environment, yes, physical environment, but the mental environment, the emotional environment too, they're all together. And I find that Western medicine just treats the symptoms and wants to look at the physical body only. And not very many doctors that I'm aware of that will actually address diet, because if we give the body the right things, it can actually heal itself. The body has the innate ability to heal itself if we give it the right conditions. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and we have the ability to change our mindset through neurosynapses and the way we think. So it's also, it's a perfect example. I'll use a perfect example for myself. We know you won't ovulate if you're under stress. I have proven that to myself multiple times, where I have been under very bad stress, and I've known in my head I'm not going to ovulate like my normal time. It's going to be late, so my period's going to be late because of the cortisol that will inhibit that. The body will not ovulate unless you're in an optimal time for it to say it's safe to. We're innate to do that by nature, to be like, it's not safe to reproduce right now. So it's tuning into that. And it's like, okay, I have a gluten intolerance. Let's stop eating gluten. Then that could be something bad. They don't look at your gut health and how that actually is impacted by your vaginal health as well. So if your vaginal HP and your vaginal microbiome is off, you're not going to be able to get pregnant, because that can inhibit that as well. And we don't look at, there's a lot we don't look at. And I bet you we'll get into that later on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, that probably leads us right into, explain to us then what the fertility awareness method is then, and also how does it empower women in understanding their own fertility cycles?
All right, the fertility awareness method is a broad name for many different methods. There's many different methods, like the Julian method and the Billion method. The fertility awareness method is just a broad term. I use I can't remember, it's a big long name, sorry. The systematic method. It's where you take all these other methods and put it together. So what it does is you're going to track your basal body temperature. Women don't know that their temperature goes up or down. It's your waking temperature. When you get up, you take your temperature. Not with a regular thermometer. It has to be a basal body temperature thermometer. And what it is it's a tenth of a degree. It's so slight. I mean, tenth of a degree is like 97. It will go to like 98. It's that tenth of a degree that really matters. It's not the 97. It's the two numbers at the end that are very sensitive. And we need that. Your regular thermometer for your temperature is not going to work. So then the next step afterwards, we chart that. We chart that every day from cycle day 1, which is the beginning of your period. Not the end, it's the beginning. Day 1 of bleeding is cycle day 1. We go from there all the way to the next day. So let's say you have a 30-day cycle. On day 31, which would be 31, you're going to have your period. So it's So day 31, if you went past that, then that's your next day of your cycle. So what indicates how long your cycle is when you start bleeding. If you get what I mean. It's like cycle day 1 bleeding starts, cycle day 1 again is when bleeding starts. So that intermediate time till you bleed again. The day before you bleed will be your last day. So let's say it's 30. So that's what you do. And then also you're going to look at your cervical fluid. Women don't realize we have cervical fluid. And they go through 4 to 5 different changes. You have very dry right after your period. And then you will have, like, think of the Elmer's glue in school. You know how it's like tacky and sticky? You'll have that. And then your next, when you transition from that glue-like texture, you're going to get what is more watery consistency. It's not pasty. It can still be pasty. It can be like a lotiony type thing, really moist. And then usually you're going to get, that's your change. That's your changing of your cervical fluid. The next thing you're going to get is what looks like raw eggshells. Like if you crack an egg, the white of the egg, you're going to get that. Some women don't get that. They just get what is water-based, where you can't even pull it apart. It's like so moist, you can't even do that. And usually if you can get it, it will stretch really long. When you get the egg white or very watery consistency where it looks like water, that is your body at its highest point of estrogen. That is when you are primed. That is when you're ready. That's when usually if you do an LH test, you're going to have your LH spike. But you have your estrogen spike and your LH, which your LH is what's telling your body it's time to ovulate. So when that spikes, you're going to ovulate within 36 hours to 48 hours. It really depends on your timing. So usually you're going to have that spike right around the same time you're going to have that egg white consistency. If you don't want to do LH testing, that's fine. But once you see that egg white consistency, it's either time to abstain from sex or to do it. Because that is your body's prime way. That is the actual cervical fluid that semen can live 5 days in. The other cervical fluids, prior to that, they cannot live.
There you go. I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm. And your cervix will change in height. It will get more lower, and the actual cervix will open instead of closed. You will actually feel it a little bit open so that the semen can get through.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting. I wasn't aware of any of that, really. I've learned a lot of new things today.
Yeah, and after you ovulate, your temperature will spike. So that's another thing. You can't predict when you're going to ovulate. Even looking at your cervical fluid, you can say it's around this time. But once let's say your last cycle before you ovulate, your temperature is 97.97, okay? And then you take it for a few days and it's 97.98, 97.99, 98. You see that slow incline. Once you get to like 3 to 4 days out of the high temperatures, higher than your 6 days before, you can then say you ovulated on this day, which will be around the time your egg white cervical fluid was around. So you can go back and look. So it really does that. And women who have PCOS, they don't ovulate, so sometimes they don't get that spike. They just have really high temperatures. And then over time, you can actually see that. And usually that's when testing comes in and then like, you're not ovulating. Mm-hmm. Let's go check on this. And you can really look at problems with that. And if you don't have this also will show you if you don't have enough progesterone, if you don't have enough luteal phase, which is the progesterone phase of your cycle. If you don't have enough days for that, then you don't have enough days for the body to implant the egg. Mm-hmm. Because you need that progesterone to do that. It stops you from having your period. It actually takes over what estrogen did and actually makes a very good home for the baby. And that's actually the cortical lupus, which is where the egg pops out and you have the little, that's what keeps the progesterone going. Your body doesn't make the progesterone for the baby till at least a month or so. So that keeps it in place. What actually starts your period is when that cortical lupus stops making progesterone. And then it's like, okay, time to shed. That's a basic thing. I could go into it more scientifically, but that's the basis. And that's what the fertility awareness method does. It actually gives you control of your body. And instead of saying, oh my God, I'm late on my period, I need to take a pregnancy test, you're being like, no, I ovulated late. Or I ovulated early, so my period's going to come early. Or it's late because of this. And we have it. You have 3 days that you can have your cycle. Perfect example, mine's about 26 to 28 days. I've been stressed out, so I know my cycle's going to go 28 days because I know what my luteal phase is. It's between 12 and 13 days, so I definitely know I'm going to be a day off. So that's when they say your average length is I always say it's the one in the middle. Too early would be 26, normal would be 27, late would be 28. But it's still within that same luteal phase.
So it sounds like it would be, quite a learning curve for somebody that's really new to this. So how many months of tracking would you say that a woman needs before she's really quite sure of what's, to predict, when it's not safe or when it's safe to have sex?
I say my program that I have is about 4 months, because after about 4 months you probably get the hang of it. And I think, apps do help, but I don't rely on apps that predict. You don't want apps that predict your cycle. You want apps that actually, you're putting the information in, and yes, it might say, oh, you had a peak this day. But until you get the rest of the data, it won't formalize that. You can go back and actually look at your temperatures yourself. You can run out your graphs. If the apps are too hard for you, then we go back to paper. Printing paper, you do it yourself.
Well, the apps are looking at things generally, aren't they? They're not taking into account that you are a specific individual, you're a unique individual, and things may be different for you.
Yeah, certain apps don't. Certain apps will take into account, they'll ask, like, what's your usual cycle between these days? And they will take in your account of when you ovulated. So it will take into your account your luteal phase after so many cycles. It'd be like, okay, your luteal phase is normal. So if you're stressed out and you ovulate late, it's going to be like, okay, this is your luteal phase. This is not abnormal. And you can go in and do that. But you got to get ones that actually don't predict your period. Because there's a lot of apps that people put in there, they're period predictors. We don't want that. We want where you can put in hard data. You can go look at the data. You can look at the trends. That's what you're doing. You're looking at the trends. You're looking at that. You can pull it up and say, see, you don't care about the calendar. I still look at it, but it's like, I can print this out and see myself that if this is wrong. So it's a convenient thing, but if you can do it yourself you can do it on your computer, Nowadays we have fillable forms. You can easily do it that way. But about 4 months, because then we can see if there's issues with your estrogen being too low or your progesterone not being long enough. So about 4 months. And what we do is, even if you're trying to get pregnant at that time, we'll still say, yeah, these are the times where you can have sex. If you're not, then what we're going to do is, when you start having watery cervical fluid, or your cervical fluid goes from dry to it's starting to change, no sex until that dries up, because you don't know when your peak day is going to be. So we're going to want to, once you start having your cervical fluid, just to be careful, sustain until it gets dry. And I mean where if you wipe, it feels like there's there's nothing there. And then also we're going to make sure you know about your cervical fluid, and then also shedding, because just like our skin, there's things that shed. Our vagina sheds. We're going to make sure you know that.
Sure. Facts, not predictions. I like that. Facts, not predictions. Okay, I think now's a good time. We'll just take a quick break, but Glenna is going to tell us her fun fact when we come back, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Bobby Aldridge with BAM Metrics. There are so many programs out there that measure your swing speed, sets, reps, your BMI, your body fat, but the one thing they're not measuring that's so essential is mobility. Mobility is the key. If you're measuring your mobility, your performance will get better and you will reduce your pain. I created BAM Metrics to make it easy for people to repeat the exercises so they could do it properly at home on their own. It's simple, it's easy to do, and from a senior to a pro athlete.
Hi, welcome back to the Transcend and Succeed show, and I'm here with Glenna James, and we're talking about all things fertility and how a woman can read her body. But first, before we get back into Glenna, tell us what your fun fact is.
My fun fact is I like young Sheldon as well as Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, and the funny thing is how in the show, young Sheldon, he had his appendix out, but in Big Bang Theory, he says he never did, so it's kind of like retconning themselves, and I think that's really funny when we can spot indifferences in our TV shows.
So why do you like that TV show, those TV shows?
I think it's because it's science-based and it's also humor, and as a science-based person and somebody who has a really weird sense of humor, I think that's what really draws me to it, as well as it's not something, in my opinion, it's a numbing. You can engage with it, especially when it's like, wait a minute, what's that word? Let me look it up. It's that type of TV show.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, I have to say, I don't have much knowledge of that show. I think I see little clips here and there, but I've never actually sat down and watched it. Okay, what are some common misconceptions about fertility that you encounter in your work, and how do you address them?
Okay, I'll just pick two. One of them is that all women have a 28-day cycle. They don't. That is a myth, and it is preceded very highly in the modern medicine. That's not true. A woman's cycle can be 26 days to about 32 to 33 days. I even say 35 days is normal. When we go past the 35 days, that's when we start looking into some issues there. The next myth is that we do not ovulate on day 14 of our cycle. That it goes back to the 28-day myth. We ovulate at different cycles. So if your cycle is 30 days, you might ovulate on day 16 or day 18. We keep going back to this model of all women should fit into this. If you're lucky, like me, to fit in that model, that's cool. But not all women are like that. I'll also say a third myth is we think we can have a period without ovulation. You can have a period without ovulating. It happens on your birth control pills that are hormonal birth control pills.
Okay.
You do not ovulate. Your birth control pill stops you from ovulating. And then when you get to sugar pills, your body's like, oh, I didn't ovulate. I didn't do this. Yeah, let's start a bleeding. It's basically a withdrawal bleeding from the hormones you're having.
I think the 28 days is more like a guide isn't it? And we can vary either side of that. I know it was never 28 days for me. It's like, what's 28 days? Never, never at all. Yeah. And
But they use that in pregnancy. That's how they
yeah,
do your due date. And if you chart your cycle, you know when your due date is.
yeah. And there's definitely no one size fits all with females and their bodies, definitely not. So how do you help women prepare then, physically and mentally, I suppose, for pregnancy and then obviously into labour and delivery?
Someone studying to be a doula at this moment, even a postpartum doula, what I have learned, and even within my own self and helping women, is that we need to realize that the medical system we're using inhibits women. It does not help, it hinders. The medicine we take for pain, the medicine we take to speed up labor actually inhibits our own body's natural ability. So it's getting back to what we should be doing. So it's empowering women to be like, if you don't want to lay down, let's use gravity to help you in these positions. Let's use counter pressure to take pressure off. Let's not go to the medicine first. Let's really try to do this, because when we take those, it inhibits things. And then you can't feel, and then your satisfaction of your birth goes down, which can cause postpartum depression and other issues. And it's also giving that woman that empowerment to be like, no, this is the birth I want. If you need a C-section, okay, here's the reason why you need that. So it's giving women back their empowerment by saying, we can do this. Our bodies are meant to birth. That's what we are supposed to do. We think it's a life endangering thing. It can be. If you have issues, if you have a high-risk pregnancy, or you have multiples, yes, we understand that. That's where modern medicine is good at. But if you are a healthy woman, it's a healthy pregnancy, you don't need those interventions. If you want to have a hospital birth, that's fine. You want to have a birth center, that's fine. You want to have a home birth. It's empowering your decision. But you should still have a practitioner there. I like a doula, and you should still have a midwife or doctor. You don't want to give birth by yourself, because you never know what complications.
Yeah, but it's having the ability and the courage to speak up and say, I don't like that idea. Does not feel comfortable to me. Whereas I think women, and particularly when I was having my kids, I was told what to do. Here's what we're doing. This is what we're going. This isn't right, even though it didn't feel right to me. It's nice that women are actually able to stand up and say, I don't like that idea, I want to do it this way, unless there's a complication and we need to do something else. I still want to run with this method.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so what are some natural techniques or practices that women can use to manage pain during labour, so without medication?
There's different positions that women can be in. There's if you have a doula, or if a doula's helped you or your partner, there's counter pressure you can actually apply to that. Movement. Do not stay stagnant at the first part of labor, which is not fully active labor. Keep walking, keep moving around, keep doing stuff. It's when we get stagnant, and it's also the birth position we're in. When we can open the hips up and actually allow the baby to come down and really use gravity to help with that. That lessens the pain. And then also, that actually helps your perineum open up, so that if you have tearing, it's not going to be as bad. We go for episiotomy right away, but there are certain positions that will relax that. And there's massages you can do to the perineum before that. So it's really preparing your body for labor. It's doing that and realizing it's going to be painful, but then also mitigating that pain with different techniques. Also, compresses, and there's certain herbs that can be used for pain relief that is safe in pregnancy. So it's that type of stuff you can do before going to the really bad pain medicine, like an epidural, because then you're immobilized.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about your take on an epidural, because it seems to be administered as part of a plan, just in general. And when I was having my kids, it was never even thought of at the time. I don't remember it ever being mentioned at all. But now it seems to be administered just as a matter of course. And I know that's the needle going into the spine, into the spinal fluid. That can cause some problems in itself, can it?
Oh yes, I'm a person that when I had an epidural, I should have listened to my mother and not got it, because that caused the progesterone, caused other issues for me. I had chronic back pain afterwards because they could not get the epidural needle and they stuck me more than one time. Mm-hmm. So you have that issue. Epidurals really, it numbs the lower half of your body, so you really can't feel. So it makes you stay in a lay down position, mm-hmm. which we know that's not actually good for delivering your baby. Which lowers satisfaction of your delivery because you can't feel anything. You don't even know your baby's coming out. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for pushing as well because it numbs those nerves and those muscles. You can't actually push. So that's where, the episiotomy comes in. That's where we don't use forceps anymore, but vacuum delivery comes as an issue. Even there's issues of that causing where a woman can't push a C-section. Mm-hmm. So it's actually hindering the woman from actually being able to actually deliver their baby. So
it's the natural process.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you usually get an epidural either before or after Pitocin. And if you get Pitocin, you're more than likely going to get an epidural because Pitocin hinders your own body's natural oxytocin level, mm-hmm. which we need. And also, even when you get an epidural, it's kind of hard, even Pitocin, it's kind of hard for you to... in some studies showed that it can hinder the way you actually feel about your baby because your delivery wasn't perfect. So mm-hmm. you start to it's a guilt. You can feel guilty about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, why didn't I do this? No, why didn't I do that? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of studies out there against it, actually.
Yeah. I know I have had 3 kids. My first one, they gave me some painkillers. I got an injection of diamorphine, I think, at the time, because things were not moving very fast and I needed to sleep. And it was a very horrible experience for me because it knocked me for 6. I was gone. And then all of a sudden they were trying to wake me up to push and I had no idea what I was doing. That was a horrible experience. And my last 2 children, I had natural births with them and nothing. I had no epidural, no gas and air, I had no painkillers, nothing. I just went with the process that my body was telling me it needed to go through, and it was so much better. And there was virtually no recovery after it. Virtually no recovery. I think because I went through and just went with what my body was telling me.
It's the rushing. That's what they do. It's like a factory where they want to rush. Until your actual water breaks, there's no problem for the baby. Mm-hmm. It's when that water breaks, then they worry about all the problems that can happen because there's no cushion or no protection for the baby at the time. That's why water births are good, because if you do it right, babies in water, it can come out. So it's really giving your body that time. If you had your water break, then yeah, we want you to have your baby within 24 hours. That's understandable. I understand that. But if you are and that hasn't happened yet, why are we rushing our bodies to do that? Because it's a set deadline. That's what they want. You're supposed to be born this day. That's what it is. It's that factory mindset. We just want all these people out and they're closing down maternity wards. So it's like women are having to go thousands of miles away or even 30 miles away for a doctor to give birth. And it's like we need more people to be educated.
And understand what they can and can't do. Yeah. So what about postpartum recovery then? It's often overlooked and people don't really talk about that so much. So what are the important aspects of postpartum care that women should prioritise?
One is to realize, yes, you are pregnant for 9 months, and that is 3 trimesters, the fourth trimester is postpartum. You need to look at that needs to shift. That postpartum care is the fourth trimester. And that lasts for a year. That's another thing. Even with strength training and taking stuff, people look at that. So postpartum is not 6 weeks. That's 6 weeks to recover, but even after 6 weeks, your muscles are still recovering. Your body's still recovering, especially if you're breastfeeding. So if you're breastfeeding, stop thinking about cutting calories. That's not important. So it's really taking the time to realize this is going to take me about a year to fully recover. 6 months to a year. Really looking at that. Also support systems. Women need the support. We need, if you don't have a spouse, your mother, your grandmother, we need the tribe back again. We need that support system. Women did not raise children in a vacuum by themselves. So it's really that support system we need. Even if it's a sister, even if it's a church member that's coming around and giving you some food. And it's also your mindset. You're going to feel sad. Yes, some postpartum baby blues are normal because of the hormonal shift. But we also need to get the stigma out of postpartum depression. We need to support these women who are having these problems, because even if you have a support system, you can have postpartum depression. It goes down if you do have a support system, but not everybody's going to have that. It's putting those methods in place. It's having that safe space for someone to say, I don't feel right with my body. I don't feel right with this baby. I feel bad. And not judging them for it.
Yep.
And it's also catching those women who are going over to postpartum psychosis. It's catching that before it becomes a tragedy. And we have seen in the news media, we have seen where women have killed their children 2 years after having them. So it's again that support system from the moment that child is born. And even labor and delivery, even going into fertility.
Yeah, I remember how important it was and how great it was for me to have, my mother and my mother-in-law and my sister that were all able to come up and help. It really does make such a difference, especially the first couple, maybe 2-3 weeks after delivery. Yeah, to have somebody there to help you. Even if it's just to go and get you a glass of water or something like that. It's so much better.
And it's the bonding. You need time to bond. That's another thing. They need to not take babies away from the mother that soon. The Apgar scale is important. They can do that while that child is on the mother. So it's the skin to skin. We need to take back our children and realize that that's what it is. Even the father, there's fathers that do skin to skin. So it's like really bringing that back to the way we used to give birth.
Yeah, and it's lovely. It's lovely bonding with your baby. Love it. So what role, let's talk about your herbs. So what role do herbs and nutrition play in supporting postpartum healing and hormone balance?
Oh my God. I think it's a lifeline. Truthfully, herbs, even before pregnancy, is a lifeline, because you just gave birth to this baby and it took everything out of you. You're still in the honeymoon phase, but what it does is really help bring your hormones that you're having, like the birth hormones, even afterwards, really back into balance. So like chamomile, something that's calming to the nervous system, it really helps bring the fragile nerves, your body back in balance. There are so many good herbs that are just nutritional herbs that are just good because they have iron, they have selenium, they have really a good foundation, and also really a good prenatal. We always take prenatals before we get pregnant, even after we get pregnant. We need to take that up until we reach menopause. So if women do take prenatal vitamins before getting pregnant, I say women should be on them or on a good multivitamin all the way through conception years. And that's another thing, food. We need to have nutrition-based food. If you are breastfeeding, that is a lot of calories you're going to be burning, and you need to replenish that. So hydration, water, sleep as much as you can. Herbs play a role by helping what you're not getting through food.
I remember when my kids were born, I was so hungry for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month. So hungry after giving birth, because you're still feeding too.
Yeah, and also it's something that people kind of get ick about, but every animal in nature eats their placenta. So placenta encapsulation is a big thing because there is something in the placenta that helps actually heal. So, at first I was kind of like, I had this talk with my husband. He goes, look in nature, look at all this. And we had this. He goes, yeah, I know it's ew, we don't want to eat it. It looks like, but encapsulation. So that is another big thing. Having your placenta encapsulated and take it is a good nutritional thing. And I didn't realize that until I looked into the research. I was like, oh my God.
I remember reading about that and thinking, I understand it, all the reasoning behind it. But I don't know whether at that time, if that had been presented to me, I don't think I would have been happy with that. But I actually get the science. So how can women navigate the emotional and mental changes that often accompany the postpartum period?
One, have the support system around you, like I said. Two, realize that you're not going to be perfect. You're going to be sad when you put that baby down. You're going to be freaked out, like, is it breathing? You're going to watch over your child. That is instinctual. That is what you want. That means you love your child. You're bonding with your child. And if you don't feel that, you don't feel those emotions, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't have all these emotions we see in TV, we see in this. It's okay. That means something is telling you something's wrong. Let's really look at it. Let's take the fear away from it. What are you afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid I'm not doing this right. I'm not afraid I can't breastfeed right. They won't latch right. Okay, then let's look at getting you some help so that can happen. And if you can't breastfeed, there's no shame in having a bottle.
Yeah.
There are women that actually breastfeed and give their milk away. So it's like there are people out there. You saw that during COVID. So it's like we can do that. And it's like, it's the fear. We need to get over what we think postpartum should look like.
So what about the importance then about the mind-body connection? How do you talk to your mothers to be about that important?
I think we start like with birth. We take fear out by education. We use education to take fear out. And then with postpartum, we go through it. We're like, okay, you're feeling sad. Why are you feeling sad? And an empathic ear. You're not saying they're feeling bad. You really are talking to them. You're really helping them through their emotions. And if it's a breastfeeding issue, then we're like, okay, I'm a lactation educator in the process of being trained. Okay, I can educate you on this. But if you are actually having problems, then let's look at a lactation consultant. Let's look at that. And it's also finding those resources for you so to make it easier. And if we can't get you breastfeeding, then we're going to set you up with bottle feeding. And it's taking that fear. It's education takes fear away. And then also, we're going to make sure you have support. We're going to build a support network one way or another. And if you don't have one, then we're going to look at community. We're going to look at community outreach. We're going to help you. That is my mission. And that's how I help my clients is, I'm not going to leave you. If I'm still with you at 6 months in postpartum, that's fine. Because what matters to me is how you are feeling and how you're actually taking care of yourself and that child. Because when you take care of yourself, you feel better and you take care of that child as well.
Yeah, it's your well-being my priority. Yeah. So what are your thoughts then on birth plans, and how can women effectively communicate their wishes to their healthcare providers? Maybe they don't feel they have the strength to stand up and say, I don't want to do it that way.
Two things. One, birth plans are essential. I know we write with doulas, we write up one. I believe we write up one for one, we write one for another, and then we write one if you have a C-section. Rewrite every single thing. So if they're like, you need to have an episiotomy. Okay, then we know how to care for that. So it's like A, B, and C. We plan for both. We plan if this doesn't happen, that. We also, in my opinion, I believe a postpartum plan is important. So we look at that. A doula. That is what she is there for, is to be that person in between, to tell you what their doctor is saying to you, and then also to help you be your voice. She advocates for you and teaches you how to do that. So a doula can be really helpful, and she helps your partner advocate. you have a partner, or if, let's say, it's your mother, she can help all of you advocate for what that woman wants.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times where the doctor says you need this, and as a doula, you tell your patient that, and they're like, no, I want this. But if it's something that is medically necessary, then you really have to be like, this is what your doctor wants you to do. I have to agree, because you're not a medical professional. But if your client or patient's like, oh no, I want this, I don't want that, then you have to let the doctor know she don't want that. Sorry, that's no go. That's kind of out of your scope of practice. But doulas are there for that reason. And actually, doulas are very important because they're a part of your team. So I really think that is important. And that's why I'm going into that work, because it's a support work.
Okay. All right. I'm going to pop a QR code up on the screen, and I know you have a women's group that you want to invite the viewers to. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Basically, it's a donation-based, or you can get in free. It really depends on. There's no issue if you can't pay. It's really. We meet 5 times a year. That might change later on. And we just sit down and we have fun. It's an educational-based health and wellness group. So we're going to, like in our first meeting we're going to be having this month, is we're going to talk about stress and how it affects your body. And what we're going to do is really deep dive into different topics. And then afterwards, we're just going to talk about anything that they have. If it's not topic related, that's fine. It's really a community to sit back and talk about it. So think of a book group, but health related. So we might throw some books in there later on. And it's a really good way for you to network with people, to get to know other people, to have that supporting community. But also it's a good way for you to get to know me and who I am. So it's a dual purpose type of thing for me. And I have past clients that are in there, and they're like, yay, we get to hear about it more. So you can think of it as like book group / webinar, because I don't want just everybody to go in and just talk about what they want. We'll talk about that at the end. But that's what it is. It's that community. We need that as women.
Okay, well, with lots of information and education, I'm quite sure. Okay, just lastly then, we've just got a couple of minutes left. So what advice would you give to women who are embarking on their fertility or pregnancy journey?
1, educate yourself. Look up your doctors and your health providers just like you do with everything else. Look them up. Interview them. Go in and see how they are. Don't just right away say that's going to be your doctor just because your friend says that's a good doctor. Have birth support. Really think about support. And if you're trying to get pregnant and you're doing it, we know that you want that baby as soon as possible. You want it. But think about a year prior. Get your body ready before you actually try, because then you are in optimal health for that baby. And also look at your spouse or your significant other. Do not take that out of the equation. They are important.
Okay, great information. And we've had a great conversation. You have given us some amazing education. I want to say thank you so much, Glenna. It was nice to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And thank you to the viewers. If you're watching on demand or live, thank you so much for popping in, and take care of yourself, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Glenna.